Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the McKinney MPB79 4.5 NRP 26D hinge is what this is. This is what the box looks like. I'll take one out and let's take a closer look at it. Very much a garden variety hinge, that's to be sure. And we'll talk about just its dimensional properties first, then we'll try to dissect that part number a bit. So this is a MPB79 in no particular order. This means it's a MacPro hinge, which is, quite frankly, I think, just a less expensive line of hinge that McKinney offers. Technically directly competing against their TA 2714 series hinge. It's just a less expensive version. It's going to meet the criteria of a McKinney hinge, I imagine. It's going to be dimensionally identical to that TA 2714. This is a 4.5 by 4.5 inch hinge. It's probably quite limited in terms of all of the sizes, but we'll look at that as well. 4.5 by 4.5, and it's 134 thousandths leaf thickness. That's what a standard weight hinge would be. And let's put the caliper on that and see what it says. It'll always be plus or minus, usually a little minus. This is spot on. That's unusual. This is exactly 0.134. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well done. This is a hinge that is going to be used in lots of common applications. It's a 4.5, 4.5, 5-knuckle ball bearing, full mortise, steel-based hinge in a satin chrome or 652 finish with a non-removable pin. Let's talk about where you're going to use this hinge. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Now, where are you going to use this hinge? Everywhere, most likely. It's probably not probably, it is absolutely the most common commercial hinge that you're going to see. Exterior doors that swing out 1 3/4 inch, standard insets, 0 or small clearance requirements, typical hollow metal doors, frames, wood doors, frames, fiberglass, aluminum. Maybe not so much aluminum. Aluminum will generally have a very small radiused corner, like 5/32, something in that range, although it can be adapted. But speaking of aluminum, 4.5 by 4.5 may not be the right size, or I should say may not be the best size. The height of the hinge is listed as the first dimension, compared to a door, where the width of the door is the first dimension. So doors, hinges. Why? Who knows? I don't. But it seems logical to me that you would want someone to tell you that data, that you would say, well, tell me this and then tell me that. Meaning, the analogy I use is I want you to go from point A to point B in a car. And it's like me saying, you know, the rate of speed to travel at. You'd like to know, tell me the direction first and then the rate of speed. So the height of the hinge is probably the more important of the two in the sense of which one you'd like to know first, because 4.5 inch tall tips us off as to what we are dealing with. And certainly in many instances what you're not dealing with. You're not dealing with 1 3/8 doors. You are not dealing with likely 2 1/4 inch thick doors. You're likely dealing with 1 3/4 thick doors, because 4.5 is a good size for that. But more, if it's 4.5 inch tall and standard weight, you can also derive, based on industry best practice, what type of door it is, in the sense of not necessarily the composition, but certainly the duty rating of the door. It's going to be likely just if it's a hollow metal door, it's going to be a 3-foot or smaller hollow metal door. That's 18 gauge, typical average usage. And what would tip me off that it was something other than that would be a thicker hinge or a taller hinge. So 4.5 tall gets me a lot of information in regards to what I'm already dealing with. You can also take the hinge information, just the size, the part number and the size, and the finish, and relate that to what you're hanging with it. And also make sure, do a reality check that it's all compatible. In terms of the width, that's more important in the sense that is 4.5 inch the best width? In many instances, it's not. And in those instances would be a typical, I have no idea where, well, I can tell, I know where this is going to a hospital in West Virginia. It's likely this is not the best size to use. Who knows? What I mean by that is really more of a discussion on how wide of a hinge you need and how to derive that. So I think what we'll do now is let's switch to the screen view. Let's take a look at how we derive that. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Here's the hinge that we are looking at. Before we get into the wide throw discussion, let's take a look at the images that we have. MPB79, everything I said earlier, full mortise, standard weight, ball bearing, 5 knuckle, steel based, NRP, non-removable pin. You can remove the pin, but it can be set to basically non-removable setting. This is the size. This is the finish. Everyone knows it is 26D, but it's better to call it 652. Why? 652 means satin chrome, which 26D does, but 652 tells us the base material, and that means steel. If this was 626, it would still be satin chrome, but then it would be made of brass. And fun fact, you would not use that on a fire-rated door. You must have a non-ferrous base material in the sense of it being stainless, or it must be made of steel. That's the hinge and its screw pack. There was a box of... This client actually ordered 9 hinges, and this is how they packaged all the screws. I pulled one hinge out of the box. Shows the full mortise aspect. The swag on the hinge leafs there shows that the hinge is indeed full mortise. When you change the swag on that hinge leaf, you'll indeed change the type of hinge it is. That's the back side of the hinge. A little close-up view. And what you'll note here with this image shows the NRP, shows their logo, shows this here area in the crotch of the hinge. They've done a pretty good job at finishing it. I've seen other manufacturers not do a good job with that. So McKinney does a decent job for what it is that they're dealing with. And as I had said earlier, an imported hinge, obviously to allow them to compete with other imported hinges. They are obviously in a position where they would like to continue to sell to their established client base, but not get shoved out of the formula of the conversation with other imported hinges. You know, just because it's made in Asia doesn't mean it's low quality. Your iPhone's made in China. But the bottom line is, that may matter. We're doing a project now where the doors and frames must be compliant with the American Iron and Steel requirement, which is a federally mandated requirement. I don't know much about it, but you'll have lots of projects where this hinge would not be permissible to use. And McKinney being a part of Assa Abloy, they of course do epic-sized projects all over the globe, so that they must have hardware that will allow them to compete with their competitors. And this hinge obviously plays a role in that. Whether or not you like or will accept or don't care about an Asian imported hinge, that's up to you. My personal opinion is, if anything on the door and frame I'd like to be American-made, it would be the hinges. It's really the backbone of the installation. Nothing happens without the hinges. You don't have a door and frame without the hinges. Anyway, now that wide throw discussion, let's dive into that a little bit. We can salvage some of this drawing, actually. No, we can't. Let's take a look. Now, the conversation... So, we've got a frame here. Got a frame here. What we don't have is any artistic skill, so bear with me. We have a couple of studs, typical construction. Okay. CMU, whatever size you want to imagine. 8-inch block. Okay. So, how wide of a hinge should you have? Well, the whole thing boils down to is, where do you need that vertical axis of pivoting? And the way to answer that question is, what degree of opening do you need to accomplish? You can see that in this scenario, There's your door. Get it out, sorry, get it out to here, showing you in closed 90 degree, 180 degree. You can see quickly this dimension on a 4.5 inch hinge, just eyeballing this, is well adequate if you wanted to go to 180 degrees. In fact, it's far too large. You'd want to consider a narrower hinge. But over here, if we, and I won't draw it all again, but if we emulated all of this here, and you needed to go to 90 degree, no problem. But if you needed to get back out and around this jamb, you're going to need to think about that width. Now, how do we think about that width? Let's think about the width. Since we're on the conversation, let's open up the catalog and see if we can pull up the formula for wide throw here. Now, once that catalog loads, let's take a search, Control F, on your keyboard for wide throw. And let's see if we can find in the catalog a definition for wide throw and how to determine it. Oh, here it is. Okay, I didn't know that it was in here. I imagined it has to be, but I didn't know where it was. So, according to McKinney, I've got a great page here, in fact. If the door is not flush with the frame, is sitting back in a deep reveal from the face of the frame, with or without additional obstacles created by applied trim on the face of the frame, or a deeper reveal caused by a projecting wall, and the door is to swing 180 degrees, then you might need a wide throw hinge. Important in this regard is how to calculate the proper width of a wide throw hinge, rounded to the next higher whole number, if result is not a whole number. So if your calculation tells you 5 3/8, you're going to go to a 6-inch hinge, is what they're saying. And by the way, wide throw hinges don't stop at 8-inch. McKinney's do, but there is a manufacturer who can do 10 and 12-inch, and I can help you with those should you need. Let's push into this document a little bit further. How to calculate. We'll go through this, and then we're just going to distill it down to its essence. If the door is sitting inside a deep frame reveal with no other obstacles, i.e. projecting trim or wall, add the depth of the reveal, distance from the face of the frame to the face of the door, to the recommended width of hinge used under flush conditions. Sure. Okay, so they're saying if you've got a reveal, let's talk about what reveal is. Reveal is the dimension from here to here. Okay, so they're saying if that dimension is 1.5 inches, you're going to add that dimension to a standard 4.5 inch hinge. Okay, it's probably going to work just fine. You could probably add it to a 4-inch hinge as well. Let's carry on. If the door is to clear projecting trim or wall and the barrel of the hinge is not obstructed, let's stop right there. If the door is to clear the projecting trim or wall and the barrel is not obstructed, what they are meaning with that is if you need to get the door out and around 180 degrees and your hinge can be installed normally, then that doesn't apply, meaning your barrel's not obstructed. What an obstruction would be, and this is not uncommon, 8-inch block, 5 3/4 hollow metal frame. Then they've got drive-it that comes and gets applied. They have a fancy surface applied material. All that drive-it is applied. You cannot install your hinge without it being obstructed. That would be a different hinge. You're looking at a variant of a raised barrel hinge. Moving on, if it's not obstructed, then calculate as follows. Double the door size. I think they mean the thickness. Double the size of the door. So let's say 1 3/4 times 2 is 3.5. Subtract 1/2 inch if the door thickness is less than or equal to 2 1/4. Okay. So 3 inch is our new dimension. Add the additional depth from the face of the frame to the obstruction to the face of the door, whatever that is, 1.5 inches. Add any clearance between the door and the frame of the obstruction at 180 degree. So 3 inch plus any sort of obstruction plus any clearance between the door and the face of the obstruction. So I take that to mean, you know, it's a long way of saying, in my opinion, you know, what is this dimension and what, if anything, is out here? You know, is there a chair rail? You know, there might be something weird like that if it's an interior application. And then they've got the math. 1 3/4 thick door times 2, 3.5, 3 inch, plus 3 inch for the additional space from the face of the wall to the face of the door is 6 inch, plus 1 inch for the clearance. Therefore, you need a 7 inch wide hinge to go to 180 degree. I will argue that that is a bit of a tough definition. Let's try this. So dt times 2, oh no, minus hb times 2 plus I plus C, door thickness, hinge backset, 1 3/4 minus, let's say it's a 1/4 inch, probably is, times 2, we're at 3 inch, plus your inset. Inset is defined as the dimension from the face of the frame to the face of the door. It's going to be negligible. Probably about 0.96. Very small, less than 1/8. Plus clearance. Clearance is going to be when your door is at 180. What's the C? Could be 0, could be 1, could be anything. For that matter, your inset could be 10 inch. Who knows? Could be anything. You could have an 18 inch frame. You could have a door. Okay? You need to get really wide throw hinges for this to work. And these do exist. That inset is let's say, 8 inch. Okay? So, inset is here. Clearance is here. The door thickness you can measure. The hinge back set you can measure. And then you can also determine your I and your C, your inset and your clearance. Then, whatever that comes up to, in this case it's, 0, because it's a knockdown hollow metal drywall frame over partition. Clearance is 0. There is no chair rail applied. There's nothing to contend with. There's a dome stop down on the floor or a wall stop. You go to the next largest size. So this would be 3 and 3/32. The next whole size, or the next size available, 3.5 would work, but 4 is the right number. So 4.5 by 4 is the answer that you might need. I think when someone selects 4.5 by 4, it tells me that they've done their calculation and they've determined it. I was told by a very major, very, very major manufacturer of hinges that said, listen, you distributors, we only give you 4.5 by 4.5 because that's what you ask for. He was saying it's certainly not always the best hinge to use. And that 4 inch wide would be a lot more common if people ran this math. All right, so let's dive into now the rest of the extended description information that's here, this, and then all of these links. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Let's dive into the extended description information. Much of it we've already covered. It's a full mortise hinge, satin chrome, 4.5 steel based, 134 thousandths. Does include fasteners. They're going to ship all wood screws and all machine screws as standard from what I've witnessed. I wouldn't rely on them sending the correct quantity of screws and assuming that they'll send all wood and all machine. I would indicate in the comment field here what the composition is of the door and frame so that we can be sure to translate that to the manufacturer and ship it accordingly. I don't think there'll be any problem with a hinge like this, but if you were to order some 6x5s, I'm definitely not thinking hollow metal on that. So if a factory sent all machine screws and half wood screws, that's probably going to be a problem. Solid bronze, oil rubbed bronze, heavy weight. Where are you going to get such a screw on a Saturday morning in an oil rubbed non-ferrous base material? So specify. Let's eliminate the guesswork. Square corner, 8 holes. It's a template pattern. We'll talk about the template in a moment. Again, ball bearing standard weight. When you have a door that has a door closer, don't use a plain bearing hinge. Use a ball bearing hinge, or at least some friction reduced type of hinge. They are templated to conform with the ANSI A156.1 and A156.7 requirements. Basically means it's a standard commercial caliber hinge tested against this criteria that every other major manufacturer has been tested against. The MacPro line is McKinney, the MacPro line by McKinney offers contract grade hinges to get the job done right. High quality MacPro hinges are an extraordinary value. Ideal when you need large quantities of standard hinges. I'm just trying to be competitive. When you buy one, we'll ship you one. They're not sold as 3. They're not sold per box, just per hinge, factory image. Now, let's dive into the Lynx catalog page first. Okay, so this shows the only 2 sizes that they offer. You're not going to get a Asian imported MPB79 in anything other than 4.5 by 4 and 4.5, 4.5. And you won't get the non-ferrous base material in anything other than 4.5, 4.5. So, steel in a plain bearing, steel in a ball bearing, stainless in a ball bearing. Steel, you can get both of these sizes. Stainless, you're going to get only the 4.5, 4.5. Standard weight again. The template. This is a representation as to where the holes are on the hinge. This tells you the locations. If you're not sure if this is correct for your application, double check. Just be sure that it is. These locations are called the template location. This document is called a template. So it's a template location hinge, meaning any manufacturer of doors and frames who produces material compatible and compliant with the template locations, this would work, is the bottom line. Hinges by company A, frames by company B, doors by company C. As long as it's all template, then it'll all work. Dimensional properties are here. They give you what's called the swag line, this S dimension. And then the OD of the barrel. I do have clients ask that every once in a while because we're trying to determine, I imagine, clearances, if something's going to fit into their unusual application. So that S dimension, that swag line, is here. MPB 4.5 by 4.5, 1 in 29/30 seconds. That's just the leaf length before the bend starts. Okay. Next document, brochure. It's going to be a regurgitation of what we've talked about. MacPro hinges. I'll leave that up to you to dive into. They do have heavyweight hinges here, the 9.9. Okay, that'll be a that will be a non-ferrous, it would be a stainless-based material. And then you have the 6.8, which is a steel-based material. All of that is heavyweight. I'm going to guess that this dimension is incorrect. It probably should be 180 thousandths. And I'm going to guess that this dimension is incorrect. It should be 190 thousandths. The 5 would be 190. The 4.5 would be 180. Plain bearing in the different sizes. Ball bearing in the different sizes. Spring hinges. You know, if you're doing hotel-motel work and you need 2 spring hinges and a ball bearing hinge, McKinney has you covered in their MP series. So much so that they supply a kit already ready to go. You just have to tell them how many doors you need to swing. Satin chrome only. Okay. Options, non-removable pin. We'll talk about that in a moment. Cross-reference. This is handy. If you're not sure if you should use an MPB hinge because you have been told to supply something else, here's a cross-reference chart for you. I don't want to pick on any manufacturer in particular, so I'll leave that up to you to discover. Catalog. This we've already dove into when we talked about the wide throw hinge. So let's use this document to talk about the non-removable pin. A set screw is driven into the barrel of the hinge. that is inaccessible when the door is in the closed position. To order, add the suffix NRP to the hinge number. So what happens is when the leaves are brought closed, the door is closed, you cannot access that set screw from the outside. It's impossible. You would loosen the set screw, drive the pin out, separate the leaves, attach it to your door and frame, bring the door to the frame, hang the door, drop the pins down, seat them, then tighten the set screws. I have tried to drive non-removable pins out a couple of times, actually just about a week ago, and I'm smacking and hammering on the hinge pin, like, why doesn't this come out? And then I realized it's an NRP hinge. Okay, loosen up the set screw, and then the pin comes out. I've also locked myself out and tried to do it, and it's just a matter of, get someone to let you in or get the key, because you're going to destroy the door, the frame, the hinge. They're not meant to come out. There are other options when it comes to security features. Now, you won't get it on a MP hinge. Their MacPro Hinge. You'll get it on their standard material, the TA, 2700, 2300, whatnot. What I'm thinking about is the security stud. Here we go. Great option. When the door is closed, this stud goes into that hole, rendering it, even if you were to drive that pin out, rendering it impossible really to slide that door and frame out of the opening. Okay. A very, a feature that I see in conjunction with the NRP in airports. I've seen doors in airport jetways and whatnot with both of those features. If you need to make sure someone's not getting in to the best of your ability, short of them driving a truck into the door and frame, you'll want to double down on that maximum security type of deployment. Other options are here as well, and I'll leave the rest of this catalog for you to discover, except to be sure, it's going to have every type of hinge that's available. Here's a full surface hinge, here's a half surface hinge, here's a half mortise hinge, here's a full surface hinge. We just happened to stumble across this. This is called an anchor hinge. You don't see these very often, but when you do, the door is probably very old and still hanging in the frame. That's because these anchor hinges are really, really designed to take years, if not decades, of use and abuse and keep that door swinging. They're expensive, but set it and forget it. Spring hinges, half surface as well. Swing clear, that's another type of interesting hinge. That's a different conversation. Wide throw, I'm sure we're going to get to raised barrel shortly. There they are, raised barrel. There are more variants than what McKinney is showing us here. And what I mean by that is, first of all, raised barrel hinges need to be ordered as either square edge doors or beveled edge doors. You can't order a raised barrel hinge without understanding what you're getting, because the bend on the hinge leaf is going to be made based on square or beveled edge. You can just see looking at this line art that it's different. However, you can also surface mount this leaf and then double mortise deep the door. So if you have a channel iron frame and you've got like a 5-inch inset, you're going to surface mount that leaf. You need a raised barrel because you'll have an obstacle to the barrel being attached. And then you're going to prep that door double deep to accommodate the thickness of both leaves and the gap between the two leaves. If someone calls and says, I need a double mortise hinge, this is what they're talking about, in my experience. This is called a Harmon hinge. This is an invention from the 19th century for sure. Also known as, obviously, a pocket hinge. These are cool. They're like swing clear hinges in a sense that they move the door and frame out of the opening, but I think they also serve as aesthetic. They also help achieve aesthetic goals as well. There is a, if you were to search for Harmon hinge, here we go. This E.R. Butler has a beautiful drawing showing how cool pocket hinges can be used. You have a common area. You've got a pair of doors at either end. Pair of doors here, a pair of doors here. Oh, sorry. What do we have here? You've got, you've got a pair of doors here, and you'll have a pair of doors here. So, except they're installed as one pair and two singles. So you've got this single leaf here that can fold in this way, in this hinge, and it's a white outline, or it's a white fill, will fold here. These two leaves can fold here and here. So you can close off this opening, you can close off this opening, you can close off this opening and this opening. So if you've got an older home, and this drawing is definitely from the 19th century, and you need to close off access to, you know, two of the four openings, you can do that. If you want to provide traffic one way only, I can't think of a reason why you would do that, but obviously it exists. The drawings here. It's a really cool use of a pocket door hinge or a Harman hinge. Obviously pivot hardware, that's pretty easy. That's just a center hung pivot, probably 200-pound rated. Continuous geared hinges and whatnot. I would recommend a review of the catalog. It's 146 pages. Worth your time if you deal with hinges because it will allow you an encyclopedic approach to the subject matter. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. I'd have no compunctions or shortcomings about using this hinge. If you want to stick with the McKinney brand, the McKinney quality, the McKinney customer service, their ability to ship, you know, why not? You know, you're limited in terms of overall sizes. The logo that's on this leaf does not match what you'll see on other hinges. That may or may not matter to you whatsoever. Obviously very restricted on finishes, sizes, base materials in combination to other safety features, whatnot. You can use them on fire-rated doors, though, that's to be sure. Close-up of the screws, 12/24 flat undercut head, 1/2 inch long, number 3 Phillips machine screws. Number 12 by 1.25 inch threaded to the head, flathead Phillips wood screws, I suppose they call them. I'd call it a sheet metal screw. A sheet metal screw would be better. That's what comes in the package. There are 24 in each because the client did order a multiple of 3. I've reached out to McKinney a number of times for the need to leave their catalog. I need something custom made, and they have been able to accommodate. You know, they are responsive. They understand the subject matter. They understand it generally using their own terminology. I've said, I need this type of hinge. Well, we call it this type of hinge. Okay, great. I'm glad to know another word or phrase used to define that hinge. But they're hinge people, you know, so they can, you know, they can adapt as well. To them, I say thank you for that. If you have any questions on the MPB79 NRP 4.5 and a 26D finish, or any other McKinney product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.